Hi everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I am on layout number 3 in my project tray series. This is a series where I take a large kit, break it down into smaller. For this instance, it was 5 mini kits to create layouts. For me and my overactive brain, it takes a lot for me to sift through different kit contents, and sometimes it's just way too overwhelming. So my brain works better with the less is more system, so that's what I'm doing in this series. Today I am using a lot of product from the Vicki Boutin, the Sweet Rush collection that is in this kit. This is the Willemstad kit that I'm using from Clique Kits. I am using a lot of the ephemera pieces from the Vicki Boutin ephemera pack that came in this kit. However, I do play around with some of the larger words from the Paige Evans paper that was in this kit. It was the 12 by 12 paper with the larger words on it, and I do end up using this word fantastic. I tried to use the word sunshine. I liked the yellow that was in it, but there was the two banners here I really wanted to bring into this spread and use together. So in the end, I decided to use that word fantastic to try to bring in some more of the blue element to this layout. I did try to use them both, but it was just way too much for a large title like that with the photo, so I just ended up using that one word, fantastic. So I am going to go through and use this striped paper. This layout, I do use mixed media. The first two layouts that I did in this series were only product. I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. I did have 2 product only layouts, and I do have 3 others that will include mixed media. I may try to include one with a cut file in it too, just to try to change it up, to try to catch everyone's interest, or as many interests as possible, because there are a lot of crafters out there who like doing one or the other, who like doing them all, or who just like to stick to product, which is why I did that. So I am going to fuss with this a little bit because I know I wanted to use mixed media, but I was trying to use this striped paper, and I also wanted to use these banners, and it just became one of those, okay, let's move it here, let's move it here, let's try this, and it was a lot of shuffling, and then I ended up, the way that I'm pulling it together now is how I ended up going with it. I liked how that bold stripe down the middle was a landing or a holding place or a grounding, so to speak, for my photos, which are of my son and his first big fish that he caught for this season. And he was super proud, so I had a close-up photo of him with it, and then I also wanted to include a second one further away, that way you could get a better visual of like really how big it was for him. So I did do a rough line there real quick with pencil, and I'm using this Dina Wakley white gesso, and I'm going to gesso the bottom portion and the top portion of this layout because I am going to use some sprays on it, and I'm going to do some mixed media. If you're not familiar, or if you're new to mixed media, gesso is the way to go. I can't encourage the use of it enough. Whether you're using sprays, inks, mists, whatever, watercolored pencils, gesso gives you the freedom and the ability to move these mediums around and gives you all of the flexibility. Otherwise, paper, because the nature of the absorption of it, will just suck it in, and then it doesn't move at all. So I did apply gesso on the top and the bottom of the project, because that's where I'm going to focus my mixed media on. And I did take a photo on my phone there just as kind of a reference so that I could remember, one, how to put my layout back together, because I always forget. And then 2, I like to look at it because it helps me put my inks down during the process. So this top color, all the sprays that I'm using today are from Shimmers. This top portion is a combination of Colorings Little Yellow School Bus and Vibes Sunset Strip. It is mostly the Colorings Little Yellow School Bus. I do add in some splatters of the Sunset Strip. It gives it like that gold deep shimmer, where the Little Yellow School Bus is more of that vibrant yellow. I do add in, though, some of Colorings in pink stilettos. I didn't have an orange in my stash, so I added some of that pink, and that created that little bit warmer, darker orange, more type orange tone, I guess. For the bottom part, I am using Colorings Well Blue Me Down, which is one of my absolute favorite blues. It's a teal blue. It's beautiful. And I'm using Colorings Don't Citron Me, which is a really bright, fun, vibrant lime green. It matches the ephemera in this collection so good. I had to use all of them. But I do layer a base down. That right there, that is the sunset strip. And at the photos at the end, you'll actually see it's a deep yellow. It's not an orange, but it's got this deep yellow tone to it. And it pops the sparkles on it so good. And it looks so good in the finished pictures. But I do a base layer of all of the sprays. And then I do go back in and just do some quick splattering. I don't do a ton of layers in this one. In one of my others, I do. But I thought, this one was the less is more. I was going off the white space, and I really wanted the embellishments on this to shine. And I also do something at the very end that I was so geeked about, you guys. These fish that I made, I was so super stoked, and it turned out awesome. So I glued down that striped paper that I tore there, and I do end up sewing it to my layout. I love sewing. Sewing adds a whole nother layer of texture, sometimes even dimension. And it also, when you do mixed media, it really helps flatten out your base paper. I did use Basil Marshmallow cardstock for my base, which is a very good, thick, 110-pound base, and I would highly recommend it. I also highly recommend Vicki Boutin's mixed media paper. That's fantastic too. But sewing your papers or anything down onto a mixed media background really helps straighten out the back paper, so I really like doing that a lot lately. So I do sew that down, and I also do put the word fantastic down. I didn't glue this at all. I just held it in place as I ran it through my sewing machine. I let the letters overlap. I let it create that fun pattern that it did, and in the end I ended up lifting the edges of those up too so that it pops off the page. Other than that, I do use a lot of foam adhesive. I have a lot of random foam adhesive on my desk right now from several manufacturers. I'm just really trying to use it up. But I do layer some foam. I do put most of my pictures on foam. The fruit honestly has not a darn thing to do with anything of what's going on in this, but the greens match the green trees and leaves in these pictures perfectly. This yellow, You Are My Sunshine, matches perfectly, and then the orange just kind of helps tie everything together, so I just went with it. Like it you guys, if you have collections that you don't know how to use things, like you don't have to use citrus ephemera for a picture that has fruit or citrus or anything in it, just use it. And this, I think, is a good example of just using it, because my photo has nothing to do with citrus or food. So this is how I end up tying in these banners. And this was just a happy accident because I had dropped one of them in place, or I dropped one of them and it fell into place, and it was perfect. So I popped the blue one up on foam, stuck it underneath the word fantastic, and then I repeated it on the right hand side, popped that up on foam, put it underneath the word fantastic. It was there. It added that other extra base. And then I found some matching teal alphas in my stash that was the perfect color match to that lighter blue stripe. So I used that to create my title, which says A Fantastic Catch. I really, at this point, I fussy way too much with the letter A in this. I couldn't really figure out where I wanted it to go. I was trying it above it, below it, beside it, to the left. I mean, it ends up living there where it is right now, just because I couldn't decide which is whatever. It's happening a lot. But the showstopper, other than the sewing and other things of this layout, are these fish. I don't remember how this piece came about, but I thought, well, what the heck? Like, he's holding this fish. That's a vertical element. A lot of my other pieces in this were horizontal, so let's add more of a vertical element to this. So I ended up just freehand sketching an outline of a fish that was kind of close to the fish that he caught, and went for it. I used the cardstock pieces that were in this kit. I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to use them, so I did use it this way because it had the darker blue, the lighter blue, and the orange. So I sketched the fish, cut them out a couple different times, and then grabbed some of this string from my stash, cut a chunk off, and glued it down, and it made this really cute fishing line. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but it's like a line, and it'll have all of these 5 fish hanging from it. So when I did put this string down, I left the bulk of it loose. I didn't glue it all down. I like when things lift and pop off the page. So I just used my tiny attacher, attached the ends of those, and then just glued it in a couple spots where I knew I was going to use these clothespins, which was another awesome find in my stash. I had clothespins. They were a pack that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, but what I ended up doing was breaking them apart and pulling the metal off and only using half of them. That helped keep it closer to my page and looked a little bit more realistic. And the glue that I used from scrapbook.com did work really well on this one because it tends to stay tacky a little bit once it dries, and it held those in place great. So at this point, the bulk of my layout is done, but I did have this tray sitting on my desk of some stuff from my stash that I pulled out because I'm trying to pull in little bits from my stash to work through to get used up too. So I did find a lemon rubber embellishment. I did find a little banner or a tab that I'm going to put up there at the top. I also had a #1 button that I put in the left spot there beside that green and orange citrus. That kind of helped bring that cluster of 3 round pieces together, and I think finished that off great. I do go into my stash of thread and pull out orange. I will add that behind that #1 button and over on the right by the You Are My Sunshine. Also, I love thread. I think it adds yet that one more item of texture. It adds that shadow, that dimension. I'm all about layers. I am not a flat page scrapbooker whatsoever. I mean, the more dimension, the better for me. So I am going to use more of that thread again up at the top right there and tuck that behind that die cut. I do use a paperweight on my paper clips because they were starting to lift, but this is where that adhesive comes in good because it does remain tacky. So all I have to do is add some weight to it, and then that will hold that in place. I do add a lemon on the right hand side there with my 3rd cluster of yellow or orange thread, and that creates that 3rd piece. Finally, at the very bottom, I add a little label there, and then I'm going to put in some lines for my journaling, which I do end up doing off screen. And the gesso that I used on this, I want to make mention, I highly recommend this for journaling also because when this gesso dries, it dries very, very soft and smooth, and you can write on it, and it's like butter. It doesn't leave that grit that a lot of gessos do. So I will add my journaling down there at the bottom on those lines off screen here at the very end. I do go through, I was going to add some enamel dots, but I ended up finding these green arrows that were two-tone, so I used them up. It was a perfect opportunity. It fit perfectly, 3 on the left, 1 on the right. I do add some yellow enamel dots, a couple green here and there. Try not to overdo it, but I always tend to on my embellishments because I'm an overdoer when it comes to embellishments, and I'm also an overthinker. So lastly, I'm going to add in that Play All Day banner there underneath the word fantastic, a couple enamel dots, and that's going to be the end of my layout. You guys, I absolutely love the way these fish turned out. I am so excited for this layout. This is probably one of my favorites that I have done in a very long time. I just love the dimension, and I love how these turned out. I love it so much. So some close-ups are coming up here. You can see how I ended up finishing up with my journaling. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you've been inspired. Please make sure that you hit that bell. That way you can be notified of whenever all of the other videos will be uploaded in this series. Otherwise, you're welcome to fall back at the playlist where I did link up at the eye. That way you can catch from the very first where I break down my paper trays and create these mini kits the whole way up to this current layout and to the ones in the future. Thanks everyone so much for stopping by today. I hope you've had fun and been inspired. Bye.